I am joined today by Isabel. Welcome.
My pleasure to be here, Emma. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to share my message with your audience.
Awesome. Let's go back, shall we? And kind of start with as the name of the name of the podcast would suggest, your career journey and your time in corporate Canada and what it taught you and the point that it brought you to.
Yes, my journey in corporate Canada started over 25 years ago now. As a young woman getting out of university, I was really aiming to have this amazing, successful career. I was chasing titles and achievements. One of my first job was with this amazing lens manufacturer that had quite the beautiful corporate culture, and I had like over amazing 10 years with that company where they showed us that our opinion counted, that they valued our work, and that they really treated us with respect. And they showed us every positive things about artificial intelligence as well. But as the company grew and eventually got into a merger with another lens manufacturer and eventually got acquired by, again, another manufacturer, then the culture just really started changing quite a bit, where the company I felt was the most amazing company with their employees and treating them with respect and trust and emotional intelligence and all that. It started really going more into a really hostile culture and started getting to moments too where it was somewhat toxic just by the way they started treating employees and their expectations in terms of the number of work hours. At the end of my career with them, I stayed with them for over 23 years. I was given a temporary assignment being head of marketing, where I was managing 32 frame brands and over
Wow.
12 lens brands, and I had a team of over 20 reporting to me. But I was doing this while I was still doing my I guess responsibilities as director of sales and marketing for this other business division. So I was managing, two different budgets.
In all your spare time, you were doing this whole other job. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing two high executive job at the same time. So the corporation was getting a 2-for-1 leader.
Yeah.
But by doing so, and I'll take responsibility for some of it because I wasn't good enough at setting boundaries, but I was also going through in my personal life, I was going through a lot. I was going through a very challenging divorce. My oldest daughter had mental health issues. And I have to talk about this because a lot of women in the corporate world, they carry the mental burden of what's going on at home.
Yeah.
And sometimes they try not to bring it to work. But I'll give you one example. I was on a business trip to Vancouver, and I get this phone call that my daughter had overdose on
Wow.
medication. And I guess the mental impact from this was like really draining me because that's a
Mm.
5-hour flight back home. And the whole way home, I was thinking as a mom, I was like, was this my fault from wanting this like high
Wow.
achieving corporate career? Like maybe that would not have happened if I had stayed home and not gone
Mm.
on this business trip. So I think a lot of women have to manage through all this stress and the pressure to be the best mom they can be, and then trying to make it like men in the corporate world as well, but having to carry all of that on their shoulders, thinking they
Yeah.
need to be strong all the time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, so that brings me to the breaking point, which after doing those two high level positions for a little over a year, I completely burnt out. And how I knew I was burnt out, I was sitting at my computer at 11 p.m. at night because you never stop working. And I couldn't even write a simple email. I can write like I just needed to put two sentences on in this email, and I couldn't even do it. So I realized there was something seriously wrong with me. And plus, I was being emotional all the time. So I went to see my family doctor, and he diagnosed me with a situational stress disorder, which is, I guess, a fancy word for burnout.
Mm.
And I took it was very hard for me to hear this because I believe that strong women should be strong and not burn
Yeah.
out. And I felt like a failure to my kids because I'm like, mom is not working. She's staying home all day. And then I felt a failure to my team that was still in that corporate toxic environment, but without me being there to protect them, because I was the protector. So I really felt like a failure. And then after that, I started a healing journey. So there's light at the end of this tunnel. And I can tell you that right now I'm completely healed. And I can share a little bit more later about how I healed myself and how I completely reinvented myself as well.
Mm. It's quite the thing that really strikes me was a number of things, but hearing you talk through that is that it literally was coming at you from all sides. As you said, it was the corporate side, it was the two jobs, it was the crazy hours, it was the toxic culture, but then everything that was going on at home as well. Like there was no respite. It was coming at you from all directions. And the other thing that struck me is when you were talking about doing the two jobs, and then in the next sentence you said, and I did that for a year. I mean, in my head, I'm like, how do you do that for a year? That's not a small amount of time.
No, it was, and now that I think back, it was a long time. And
Yeah.
what's a little troubling in this whole thing is that I had talked to a couple of like leaders in the corporation and HR about the fact that I could
Mm,
feel myself starting to feel sick, and I could feel that my brain was just not okay. If I
yeah.
was focusing on a task, if one of my daughter would ask me a question, I just lose it because I couldn't process two things at the same time. It was just
Mm,
becoming too much. So I would encourage corporations, not only in North America, across the
mm,
world, to really try to focus on their employees like they say they do, and really make sure mental health is one of the
yeah.
focus within how they manage and lead employees.
Yeah. What response did you get when you were having that conversation? Just say, yeah, whatever, get on with it.
From HR, it was, I'm going to bring this up at the next like operating
Mm,
meeting or talk to this leader about it. But it never,
nothing
it
ever
was, it
happened.
never
Yeah.
evolved into a solution, right? So it just,
Yeah.
they kept extending the period and kept extending the period. So it's unfortunate, but sometimes corporations, they get bigger, and how they, I guess, how they make more profit is by cutting costs. So if you can get an employee doing two
Mm,
jobs while you're definitely
yeah.
saving on the headcount. So maybe that was their way of looking at it. So focused on their
Mm,
stock options and the results, as opposed to being
the
focused on
person.
leading with
Yeah.
love and empowering their employees to become their best selves.
Let's leave that bit behind and let's move on to the more positive bit that came next. Talk me through those next few months and what you were able to do to bring yourself through that.
Yes. The first couple of weeks after I got diagnosed, I spent a lot of time in my bed because I was I was depressed. So it was
Mm,
hard to even get outside of bed and even going for a walk with my dog. So what I started doing, because I was inside a lot, I started reading a ton of books like on self-development, on the power of the mind, on meditation, and I was watching podcasts nonstop as well. So, along with the medication given by my doctor, I started slowly feeling better, being more positive about life. And I started a practice that really truly was my anchor and that changed my life was meditation. So I
mm,
started by just doing 5 minutes every morning, and then I kept increasing the length. And at first it was just about clearing my brain from all the noise, but eventually I evolved it into I want to really build my future. So I'm going to meditate about what I want in my life instead of being a victim and thinking about what I don't want. Meditation's been really my anchor, and I talk a bit about it in my book, because yes, that there is a book, and through that healing process, one morning I woke up with absolute clarity that I needed to share my story with the world, and then that I needed to provide my audience with everything that I've learned through my sick
mm,
leave. So in my book, Love Lead Succeed, I have 15 chapters of content on the power of the mind, on how to lead your team with love, on emotional intelligence, and all these topics that are really, I hope, influencing the business world, not to just focus on numbers, but
mm,
focus on leading their employees with love and emotional intelligence, because we're all humans after all.
Yeah.
Numbers are important, but don't forget your greater purpose and how you should treat other people with trust and respect.
Yeah. And even for businesses that do just focus on the numbers, as it were, you can't get to those numbers without the people. So even if that is your ultimate goal, you still need people to be happy, functioning, productive to actually get there. So even the businesses that won't take a perhaps slightly more altruistic version of it, you can still get to the same outcome.
Yeah, and I wish more corporations would do that and just not stop celebrating the hustle culture, because
Yeah.
that's something we're really good at doing in North America. And it's like the busier you are and the more output you get, that's how you just success of
Yeah.
your day or even your life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I would recommend just being more in alignment with who you really are and your vision for your future as a human, not only as
Yeah.
a corporate person working in for a corporation.
When you started talking about your journey, you said how you, at that stage, kind of early 20s, would have defined success as climbing the ladder, getting the big title, corporate life, corporate job, or all that kind of thing. I guess what a sort of traditional version of success, to use that word. How do you think of success now, and how do you define it for yourself now?
Yeah, so I changed my definition of success from not what I achieve and the titles and the number of emails or even to material things. I've changed my approach to life and how I walk into this world. To success for me is how aligned I am with my purpose and my vision. And as long as I'll keep doing this, then I'm successful. How I show up in this world and bring love and practice a leadership of really serving others as opposed to controlling others, which is
Mm,
really how it should be, right?
yeah.
And I'm going to spend probably the rest of my life now promoting my message because I believe in it so much. And there's so many C-suite women out there that are completely exhausted and overwhelmed that need to hear more of this, and that it's okay to feel tired, and there's
Mm.
ways to how they can really heal themselves and change the way they show up in this world.
This might sound like a slightly strange question on the face of it, but bear with me. Having been through such a really difficult, challenging time and come out the other side of it, do you think you would have got to where you are now had it not been for that challenging time? Like, how do you view that time now in hindsight?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And we hear that all the time. Everything happens for a reason.
Mm,
And I'm actually very grateful for what happened to me and my burnout, because
yeah.
I've learned so much, and it made me change as again how I walk into this world, how I treat others. I've learned to stop judging, and I've learned all kinds of powerful things that really make me align with my purpose. And that burnout was really an awakening for me. So
Mm.
I call it a blessing, even though I'm sure back then I would not have called it a blessing. But now I can look back on it and just be grateful that I was able to learn so much and now share this important message
Yeah.
with everyone.
The reason I asked the question is it's something that I've observed and had conversations with other people about, that the thing that has probably been the most challenging thing in their life, or one of the most challenging things in their life, in hindsight, they view very positively because it was the thing that led to quite a profound change. And it's been true for me too. I was, gosh, when is it now? 2018, 2019, really sick. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I feel the
Oh,
same way
sorry.
looking back on, no, it's okay. I feel the same way looking back on that. Like, I feel incredibly positive about that experience, because sounds a weird thing to say. I'm grateful that I got cancer. It sounds super strange, but I kind of am. It really changed me and how I think about things. And I've almost got to the stage where I don't know that as humans, we're capable of really profound change without some really difficult kind of trigger event. When I speak to people, it's often things like that, like a burnout, like serious illness, loss of a loved one, divorce, something really that shifts the ground beneath you, often leads to some really big change. And off the back of that change, I hate the word I'm about to use, a pivot, to go in a quite different direction. And similarly to what you're saying, they're actually taking what you learned through going through that really challenging experience and sharing that with other people to show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's another way of looking at things, and I hope that perhaps not everybody has to go through that super challenging time to get the learning to come out the other side.
That's very true. And I don't feel like a victim because I believe the universe is either rewarding you or teaching you a lesson. And
Yeah,
I had to learn through everything I went through that you need to love yourself first and take care of yourself first. And you can't pour from an empty cup. So the universe taught me to just wake up and start taking care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, something will. And
yeah,
so it was a good lesson. And almost immediately when I started my sick leave, I knew that I wasn't going back in this
yeah,
corporate toxic environment, because
yeah.
I loved myself more than to do this to
Mm,
myself again.
yeah,
So that was very clear. And that led me to a journey of transformation where I completely healed myself, but also transformed myself at the age of, I was 47 back then.
mhm,
And it's something that's scary sometimes to start your own business,
yeah,
publish a book, start coaching, start public speaking. But I believe that in life, you have to embrace some of your fears and just go for it and just work towards your goals a little bit every day, and eventually the universe will reward you for all the efforts that you've put in and for your vision.
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I think it's a bit of a tangent, but I think there's a lot of the conversations that I have at the moment with women of a similar age that are in their kind of mid 40s, late 40s, even early 50s, that are making quite significant changes and going in different directions and really using, as I said before, really using what they've learned and found to be true in their own lives and then sharing that with a wider audience. And I think I'd imagine for your audience as well, it's a big part of the reason that your message resonates so highly is that you have been through it. You are have experienced what they are experiencing. And you can, I guess, give a bit of a roadmap almost to use that terminology and show them what's on the other side.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what my book is, a roadmap.
Mm,
But that's why I love my coaching work so much, because my customers can relate to what I've gone through.
yeah.
And I have like physical examples and practical tips on how they can really reclaim their time and energy and
Mm,
not live under such pressure and having that overwhelmed feeling all the time.
yeah. I was going to ask you about that actually, and let's do it now, seeing as you've just brought it up. For someone that is feeling that way and maybe feeling a little bit trapped and they're not sure what way to go and maybe even having some of those kind of physical symptoms that you were experiencing of burnout, like what are the first early steps that they can take? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I would suggest to talk to someone about it.
Yeah.
Now, I would say talk to someone at work, but sometimes based on my experience, it doesn't
Yes,
always
that's the problem.
you don't always get the relief, but at least talk to someone that you trust, a friend or a family member. And if the syndromes persist, again, you have to love yourself more and say you have to listen to your body, and your soul always knows too. And you need to take those steps to, if you need a break from work and take a few weeks off, then I would say that would be the next thing they need to do, and then start working on healing and their vision. And there's no corporation that's worth your health. Don't stay in a toxic environment. There's always, you're a supernatural human being and you'll find another opportunity, elsewhere. Don't let fear guide your life.
I think as well, and I see it often in my work now and in my previous kind of recruitment life as well, that I think often when people are in that situation and they are feeling fearful, the choice feels quite binary to them. They don't necessarily see all of the options that are available to them. It feels everything's narrowed down and it's stay or leave. And then what happens? Or, oh, I can just keep going. They don't necessarily see, as I said, all the avenues and all the options that are potentially available to them. And I think it is that fear instinct of what will happen if I leave and will I get another job? And obviously the practical realities of we've got to make money and have a place to live and buy food and all of those kind of things. But yeah, just it does seem to be that they get stuck on that kind of quite binary choice. Do you find that as well? Have you seen that?
Yes, leaving a corporation that you're, feeling kind of comfortable with in terms of your financial situation is
Mm.
hard and it's a challenge. But to go back to your question, if they ask, what happens if I can't find another job, or what happens, they need to ask themselves, what happens if I stay?
So yeah.
And they might find that the answer is worse. Talk
Mm.
about your mental health, your physical health, and feeling stuck, right? Sometimes the biggest path to growth is just embracing your fear and believing in your future, not staying stuck where you are. Choose yourself first.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. It's that kind of example of people will choose certainty, even if the certainty is horrible and they hate
Yes.
it over the uncertain, because obviously by definition, you don't know what the future holds. You don't know what the uncertainty is. And there can be that tendency to default to, well, what if it doesn't work out? But what if it does work out? What if it's
Yes.
amazing? What if all these doors open and there's all these options in front of you? But I think it's really interesting, the kind of, I guess, the human psychological reaction to certainty and uncertainty and how we typically see those things.
Yes. And I think people need to, as you mentioned, we need to rewire our brain to
Mm.
think about the positive option as opposed to the negative one. But as I mentioned, our brain is often not kind to ourselves. So we'll often
Yeah.
think about the worst possible outcome. Well, if you believe that this is what's going to happen, maybe that's what's going to happen. So you
Mm.
need to have more elevated thoughts and try to think positive, right? Whether it's through positive affirmation, there's all kinds of ways you can help your brain evolve into something more powerful and positive. But that's what I would recommend to people.
Yeah. And I think as well, we've mentioned it before that, the kind of the voice in your head. And as you said, it's not always kind to us on its default setting, but you don't have to accept the default setting.
Yep. Yeah. I just question what you're thinking and say,
Yeah.
thank you, but no thanks.
Yeah.
You can argue with yourself a little bit.
It's funny to say that because I do that all the time. And I think there's this sense that because the thought is in your head, that it's what you actually think. If that's what my thoughts are saying, then it must be true because they're my thoughts. I must actually think that. But
Yeah.
quite often it's not the case. You don't. It's that perhaps very primal side or the negative side or the whatever. You don't have to accept what those thoughts are saying. And it's funny to hear you say, no, thank you. That's I often find myself saying exactly the same thing. Thought pops up and I'm like, no, I don't want to think that. I don't want that. Thank you very
No.
much. Go away. And it sounds a bit crazy to say it out loud, but it doesn't take that long of continuously doing that to change the texture and quality of those thoughts into something that's far more helpful and actually not working against you, but actually helping you to move forward in whatever way that would be. The other thing I just wanted to touch on with you, Isabel, was you were talking about leadership and more, I guess, kind of heart-centered leadership, the sort of love versus fear. Can you just give me I appreciate it's not a small topic, but I guess an overview of how you see that?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess the central message of, I guess, my Love Lead Succeed coaching platform and my book is really that leadership is not about authority.
Mm.
Leadership is about love, and love is not soft. It's how you serve your people and you spend your career doing leadership based on service, trust, respect, and you make those courageous decisions to really support the people. Because as we said earlier, numbers are important, but at the end of the day, we're all humans. And if you want your employees to achieve those numbers, you better make
Mm.
sure that you have a leadership approach that focuses on love and service as well.
Yeah, we've lost that somewhere along the way, haven't we? As you said, like leadership's become about command and control as opposed to servitude and helping your people to get to where they need to get to. It's a
Yes.
huge topic, and I guess we could have a whole other podcast about that topic
Yes.
alone. But
Yeah, especially about, and when I say serving your employees, it's to bring them to a place where they can rise higher.
yeah,
And when I was
yeah,
managing people, I would always joke around. I said, my goal is for you to take my job at some
yeah,
point, because you need to, a big responsibility for every manager or leader needs to be about, yeah, making them rise. But how do you do that? You do it through coaching, right? And the biggest gift you can give to your employees, it's your time. And if you do it the right way, I think too many leaders don't have enough coaching skills. And if they could only do that, like they could have like amazing teams, because you need to give them the opportunity to learn as well and share all the skills that you've learned through your career
yeah,
to be able to bring them higher.
yeah. But as you say, it takes time, and I think that's often the thing, isn't it? The finding the time to be able to do that and valuing that time and understanding that is a critical task. It's not a nice to have. It's not something that you do if you've got nothing else to do. It should be pretty near the top of your list as this is a critical task. This is a priority in my role. And this is something that I should be spending a pretty significant portion of my time doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we should all. I think the issue is that when you get into the, I guess, the actual world, like give you my, I guess, my calendar as an example.
Yeah.
At the end of my career with that corporation, sometimes some days I had 17 meetings booked, and some meetings
Yeah.
they were like just overlapped. So you're going in between like this meeting to this meeting to this meeting. And when you have that kind of schedule, it's hard to
Yeah.
truly give your presence and your time to your people. But that's what in should be happening if you want to lead with love.
Yeah. Absolutely. Final question, Isabel, and it's always the final question here, and that is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
I wish I knew how to control my mind when I was younger and at the beginning of my career. I wished I truly loved myself enough to always believe that I can achieve anything and that we are all unlimited human beings
Mm.
capable of achieving amazing things. So that's what I wish I knew earlier in my career. I think I would have made some bolder moves sometimes and really believed
Yeah.
in myself more.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I obviously ask that question at the end of every episode, and people have obviously their own takes and their own kind of nuances on it, but often it does boil down to, I wished I'd believed in myself sooner, or I wish I'd had more confidence in myself, like some version of that answer. Thank you, Isabel. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your just, yeah, fascinating story. And I love, as I said at the time, I love what you've turned it into. And I love that through such a difficult, challenging time, you've come out the other side and turned it into something really positive. It's great to hear.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, Emma, and being able to share my message with your audience. If they're looking for more tips on how they can tap into their unlimited potential, they can follow me on Instagram at Love Lead Succeed or find me on LinkedIn or YouTube as well.
Great. I'll pop all of those links in the show notes as well, so people can find them easily.
Great. Thank you so much.